going on, guys? Nate Dog here, bringing you my build, the Rogue, for the Elder Scrolls Online Harrowstorm patch. This build focuses on your foe's vulnerability by reducing their physical and spell resistance, applying the poison status effect, and then blowing them away with Execute. But before we get into that, I just want to send a thank you to everybody for all the support that you guys have given me. My last video hit 400 views, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for it. I really appreciate it. So, without further ado, let's dive into this build. Starting off with our character sheet. Our max magic is sitting at 11,000, almost 12,000, with max health at 20,000 and max stam sitting at 28, almost 29,000. Magica recovery is at 600, health recovery at 300, with stam recovery at 1,600. Our spell damage is sitting at 1,500 with a spell critical of 24.6%. Weapon damage at 2,900 with weapon critical at 57.3% on the bow bar. Our spell resistance is at 14,000, physical resistance at 11,000, almost 12,000. Over into the dual wield. Our spell damage goes to 1,700, while our weapon damage goes to 3,300, with weapon critical increasing to 62.3%. Using our potion, our Magica recovery goes up to 700, with health recovery at 400, and stam recovery going to 1,800. Our weapon damage can go further on the dual wield bar by applying this. Our weapon damage then increases to 3,800 with a weapon critical at 68.3%. Spell damage goes to 2,100. On the bow bar, weapon damage goes to 3,400 with weapon critical sitting at 63.3%. Spell damage is at 1,800. Attributes, we put 64 points into stam. The reason this for is we do stam abilities and are doing DPS in stam. The higher the stam we have, the more we can cast abilities in that. Active effects that we have the Thief Stone, which increases our weapon and spell critical strikes ratings by 2,300. And the Shadow Stone that increases our critical damage done by 19%. Drink that we are running in the Dubious Cameron Throne, which increases our stam recovery by 270, our max stam by 2,500, and max health by 2,700. Potions that we are running, it's called Essence of Health, but this is actually a tri potion. Gives us 8,600 health with 20% health recovery increase. Gives us 7,500 Magica back, with giving us Magica recovery by 20. And also 7,500 stam back, with a stam recovery by 20%. The reason I went with the tri instead of increasing our weapon and spell critical is because I felt like it was as high as I needed to get it, and we didn't want to do a weapon damage increase potion because we already have an ability that also gives us that, so they do not add on top of each other. So felt that it was better to do tri-stat since we do have a ability in Magica with not so high a Magica recovery. And with running a lot of stam, it's a lot nicer to have more stam recovery coming back and health coming back to us to help us sustain in the fight. You can't DPS very well if you don't have the health to back you up. Because if you can't survive the fight, your DPS is no good. So, going into the stuff that we are wearing. On our main hand, we have a bow. This is part of the Hunding's Rage set. We are wearing 5 pieces of this set. This requires 6 traits of research in order to craft it. The enchantment we went with was Absorb Stam enchantment, dealing 2,300 physical damage and restoring 350 stam when procced. Reason we went with this, help with the stam recovery a little bit easier. That way it makes it a lot easier for the user to use. We went with the Nirnhone trait, which increases damage of this weapon by 15%. I felt like I needed more damage on this build. With the increase of our crit chance, it's more likely we'll end up dealing a lot more higher damage. So, more damage with the higher crit chance, more DPS you're putting out per second. Over into our next weapons we are dual wielding with daggers, part of the Hunding's Rage set. First one that we have has an enchantment of weapon damage, increasing our weapon damage and spell damage by 170 for 5 seconds when procced. We decided to go with Nirnhone, increase our damage of this weapon by 15%. Like I said earlier, more damage the better you're off. On our backup one for that, we did Crusher's enchantment, reducing the target's physical and spell resistance by 800 for 5 seconds. The reason we did this is by reducing the target's physical and spell resistance, it is a lot easier to hit the damage that you feel like hitting, in my opinion. That is why we then went with the sharpened trait, increasing our physical and spell penetration. Because by reducing their physical and spell resistance and increasing our penetration, the more likely we'll hit these higher numbers that we are looking for our DPS over the seconds. The reason I didn't go with Pierce on the other one that I went with Nirnhone is because, like I said, I feel like my critical rating is at a good, comfortable spot where I like it, and decided to go with more damage than the crit chance, sitting at 60 some odd percent. So over into apparel, we are using a 5-1-1 ratio, which is 5 medium, 1 light, and 1 heavy. How I have this set up is I would recommend, or the way I have this set up, I would not say is the way that you need to run it. A better way to run this is I do have a set that I only use 2 pieces from that set, that I would recommend using those pieces on your head and shoulder. I am currently wearing them on my shoulder and waist. Reason I would run them on your head and shoulder is when you are finally running your dungeons and go through your dungeons, a good monster set to run is Selene's. The first piece on Selene gives you 1000 max stam, while the second piece, when you deal direct melee damage, you have a 15% chance to call a primal spirit that mauls the closest enemy in front of you after a 1.3 seconds for 12,000 physical damage. This thing can occur every 4 seconds. Well, for us, we do deal a lot of melee damage. That is where our major output of damage will be. So by adding this set to you'll end up hitting a lot more DPS. So starting off with the head, this is a medium piece. We are using the Twiceborn Star set. Twiceborn Star is a 9 trait research, which may take a while for you new people out there, or you can find guilds that will actually maybe help you out, or other players online that will help you out making this set for you. On all of our heavy pieces, which would include head, chest, and legs, we will be running the max health enchantment to increase our max health, so we are more tanky and more survivable in dungeons. All the sets will be running Divine's traits because we do have 2 Mundus Stones, so we want to get the maximum out of our Mundus Stones by doing so. So part of the Twiceborn Star set, for wearing 2 pieces, we get 1,200 max health. 3 items we get 1,000 max stam, and 4 items we get 1,000 max magicka. And for 5 pieces of this is where we get our 2 Mundus Stones at the same time. chest that we're wearing, this is medium armor, part of the Twiceborn Star set. Max health on this, divine traits. Our shoulder, this is part of the Night Mother's Gaze set. This is a 6 trait research in order to craft this yourself. This is a small piece, so we are running max stam enchantment on it with divine traits, and for 2 pieces of this we get 830 weapon critical. Our waist is light armor. This is a small piece. This is part of the Night Mother's Gaze set with stam enchantment, divine traits. Our hands is medium armor, Twiceborn Star set with stam enchantment, divine traits. Legs, medium armor, Twiceborn Star set. Max health enchantment, since this is a large piece again, with divine traits. Feet, medium armor we went with, Twiceborn Star set. Stam enchantment for smaller pieces, divine traits. Over in the accessories, our accessories are part of the Hunding's Rage set. We end up going with weapon damage enchantment on all 3 pieces, with infused trait, increasing jewelry enchantment effectiveness by 42%, as you can see. This only being blue, we still do very well in dungeons nonetheless. With it being gold, our infused trait would actually be a lot higher, and our weapon damage would actually be a lot higher also. Part of the Hunding's Rage set for 5 pieces. For 2 pieces, you have 800 weapon critical. For 3 items, you have 1000 max stam. 4 items, you have 800 weapon critical. And for 5 items, you have 280, almost 300 weapon damage. Over in the skills that we are running. Starting off on the bow bar, our first ability that we have is the 5th ability unlock. It starts off as Poison Arrow, morph it to Poison Injection. We poison an enemy, dealing 3,800 poison damage, and then an additional 7,600 poison damage over 10 seconds. We deal additional 100% more damage to enemies who fall below 50% health. So you're going to hit a lot harder. This is an execute ability. You're going to hit a lot harder when the enemy's health is below 50. That does not mean we only use it when the enemy only falls below 50. We will want to apply this to the enemy, so we will want to keep this up by adding negative effects to the enemy. By doing so, this actually helps us out with one of our other abilities later on. Next ability we have is in the bow bar again. It is the 2nd ability to unlock. It starts off as Volley, morph it to Endless Hail. Launch arrows into the sky to rain down, dealing 1,200 physical damage to enemies in the target area every 1 second for 12 seconds after a 2-second delay. Duration says 4, so you fire it, 2 seconds go by, then for the 12 seconds remaining, the arrows start falling. What that looks like is I'll pop a yellow area effect that you'll see on the ground. In that area where the arrows are falling is what will be damaged. The outer circle of it to the inside of it is what will be damaged. Next ability that we are running, it is in the Shadow Tree. It is the 5th ability to unlock. It starts as Summon Shade. We want to morph it to Dark Shade. Summon this shade version of ourselves to attack an enemy to fight alongside us for 20 seconds. The shade slashes enemy, dealing 2,500 magic damage, and occasional whirlwind to all enemies around it, dealing 2,500 magic damage. The shade also inflicts minor main, reducing enemies' damage done by 15% for 4 seconds. This ability scales off of our highest offensive stat, so this is based off of our weapon damage, not magic damage, since our stam abilities are a lot more stronger. So minor main, what that means is by reducing the damage they deal by 15% for 4 seconds after the whirlwind attack, helps enemies not nerf us down as fast. That way we can actually survive the fights a lot easier. Summon Shade. So, next ability we have on the bow bar is in the Assassin skill line. It is the 5th ability to unlock. Starts off as Grim Focus, then morph it into Relentless Focus. Focus our sense for 1 minute, reducing our damage taken by 2% for every light or heavy attack we do, up to 5 times, so it can be a maximum of 10%. With 5 light or heavy attacks, we then convert the ability into Assassin's Scourge, allowing us to fire a spectral arrow for half the cost, dealing 14,000 disease damage, and heal us for 33% of the damage dealt if we are within 7 meters of the enemy. So you'll want to proc this, and you'll see that my ability all of a sudden changes. When it changes to that is when it's ready for the disease damage, and if we are standing close enough, we will get health back. Next ability we have is in the Siphon tree. It is the 4th ability to unlock. It starts off as Siphoning Strikes. Morph it to Leeching Strikes. It embeds our weapon with soul-stealing powers, causing our light and heavy attacks to heal us for 1,400, almost 500 health, and restore 100 stam for 20 seconds. Fully charged attacks restore twice the value. We restore an additional 4,200 stam when the effect ends, based on the length of time Leeching Strike was available. So what we want to do is we want to pop this up and then just leave it tick for the duration. As we're doing attacks, we're getting stam back, so we just want to leave it for the duration. As soon as the duration hits about 1, is probably a good time to pop this thing again. So last ability we have in the tree starts off as Deathstroke. Morph it to Incapacitating Strikes. Ravage an enemy with a swift strike, dealing 12,000 disease damage and causing them to take 20% more damage from your attacks for 6 seconds. If we cast this with 120 or more ultimate, the enemy is silenced for 3 seconds. What silence means in the game is if they are a Magicka base build, that if you hit them with this ability at 120 or more, you will not allow them to cast any magic abilities for the next 3 seconds, which is huge when you're going against Magicka base enemies. While slotted, we also gain Ravage, which restores 100 Magicka and stamina when we deal damage with light or heavy attacks on an enemy with negative effect activated on them. So, like I was talking about earlier with the poison effect, that poison icon with the skull underneath the skeleton humanoid thing is a negative effect. By applying that every single time now we attack with our Incapacitating Strikes on, 100 Magicka and stam back for it. Now going over into the Dual Wield Bard. Starting off with our first ability in the Assassination skill line. First ability to unlock starts off as Assassin's Blade. Morph it to Killer's Blade. Stab an enemy, dealing 4,000 disease damage, dealing 300% more damage to the enemies who fall below 25% health. This is our second execute button. This one we will want to wait when the enemy falls below 25% health. We end up doing a lot more damage that way. And even the lower the health, the more harder this thing will hit. This ability also heals us for 4,300 if the enemy dies within 2 seconds of being struck by this. This portion of the ability is scaled off of our max health. So by having a decent amount of health, we get more health back for it. Next ability that we have is in the Dual Wield tree. It is the 4th ability to unlock. Starts off as Blade Cloak. Morph it to Deadly Cloak. Envelope ourselves in a protective cloak of razors. We gain major evasion for 10 seconds, reducing damage of area effect by 25%. This helps us a lot to survive area effect attacks, which helps us stay in the fight longer. And then for every 1 second, the shrapnel will pulse, dealing 1,100 physical damage to enemies within 5 meters. This is another area effect, so you want to add this on top of your Endless Hail to get the maximum amount of damage you can out of your 2 abilities. Next ability we have is also in the Dual Wield tree. It is the 2nd ability to unlock. Starts off as Twin Slashes. Morph it to Blood Craze. We slash enemies with both weapons, causing deep laceration, dealing 2,000 physical damage with each weapon and causing them to bleed for an additional 8,000 physical damage over 10 seconds. We also heal for 6,900 health over the duration, almost 7,000 health. So what that looks like is that, as you can see, this is also a negative effect on the humanoid. Next ability we have is in the siphoning. It is the 5th ability to unlock. It starts off as Drain Power Morph. Morph it to Power Extraction. Siphon the vigor of your enemy's blood, dealing 6,000 disease damage to all nearby enemies. If an enemy is hit, we reduce their weapon and spell damage by 200 for 8 seconds, and you gain Major Brutality and Sorcery, increasing our weapon and spell damage by 20% for 20 seconds. So by our Shade applying Minor Maid for 4 seconds, we also can add weapon and spell damage reduced by 200 for 8 seconds. This is an area effect ability. We will want to use this with our Endless Hail along with our Quick Cloak or Deadly Cloak to maximize the amount of damage we can do in an area, because this will also give us an increased damage to our weapon and spell damage by 20% for 20 seconds. Next ability we have is in the Shadow skill line. It is the first ability to unlock. It starts off as Veiled Strike, Morph it to Surprise Attack. This is our spammable that we'll end up using a lot to light weave into. We slash enemies, dealing 8,100 physical damage. If we are flanking an enemy, shred through a small portion of their armor, reducing their physical resistance by 5% for 10 seconds. Attacking with Surprise Attack while sneaking or invisible stuns the enemy for 3 seconds and sets them off balance. So what flanking means is the skeleton's shoulder is if you're looking at them by standing on the side here and all the way around to here, will end up reducing their physical resistance by 5%. If you watch the health bar when I use the surprise attack, you can see the little cracks in the health bar. That means we have applied the reduced physical resistance by 5% in the target. The ultimate that we have is the same as our bow bar. It is Incapacitating Strikes. If you find yourself that you are struggling with your health in the game and cannot complete dungeons because your health is not staying up very well, I would recommend then the ultimate on the dual wield bar, because it is a dual wield ultimate, would be Laceration, Morph to Ren, because this slashes enemies in front of us, crushing them, causing them to bleed for 44,900 physical damage over 16 seconds, and also heals us for 51% of the damage done. So almost 45%. And 51% of 45,000 is 22,500. With us only having about 20,400 max health, this gives us a lot of health, and it gives us full health. So, passives that we have for this build. Starting off in Assassin, we have Master Assassin, increasing our weapon and spell damage by 10% when we are sneaking or invisible. Increase the duration of stun by 100%. Things that we will want to get for sneaking around. Executor, when an enemy dies within 2 seconds of being damaged by one of our assassination abilities, we restore 1,800 magic or stam, whichever one's higher, so we get stam back for this after using an assassin ability. And on the dual wield bar, we have 2 of them. And then on the bow bar, we also have 2 of them. Next passive we have is Pressure Point. This increases our weapon and spell critical rating by 438 for each assassin ability slotted. Since we have 2 of them, we get 870 on both bars. Hemorrhaging increases our critical damage done by 10%. This is only applied when we have an assassin ability slotted. Well, we have 2 of them, so we get that 10%. Increase our critical damage by 10%. Along with the Thief, we get an additional 19 on top of that. Dealing critical damage grants us and our group members minor savagery, increasing our weapon critical rating by 1,300 for 20 seconds. Nice thing to help your group out with. Next set of passives that we have in the shadow is Refreshing Shadows, increasing our health, stamina, and magical recovery by 15%. Nice thing to have. Next we have Shadow Barrier. Casting shadow abilities grant major resolve for 6 seconds, increasing our physical and spell resistance by 5,000. This duration is increased by 25% of heavy for each piece of heavy armor we have. We have 1, so the current duration we have is 7.5 seconds. Next passive we have is Dark Vigor, increasing our max health by 3% for each shadow ability slotted. So we get 3 on this, and we get 3 for this one, since we have at least 1 shadow ability on both bars. Last passive is Dark Veil, increasing the duration of our non-invisible base shadow abilities by 2 seconds. So it just gives us a little longer duration on those. In the Siphon, for passives that we're running, we have Catalyst. After drinking a potion, we gain 20 ultimate, very handy. Next one we have is Magic of Flood, increasing our max magicka by 8%. While a Siphon ability is slotted, we have 1 on each bar, so magicka is always increased by that 8%. Next passive is Soul Siphon, increasing our healing done by 3% for each Siphon ability slotted. This helps us with our little heals when we're firing them, and since we have at least 1 on each bar, we get that 3%. Transfer, casting a Siphon ability generates 2 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 4 seconds, so this is where our ultimate regens with our potions also. Now into weapon passives, dual wield, we have Slaughter, increasing damage done with dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So with our Execute also, with this, we're doing a ton of damage when enemies fall below 25% health. Next one we have is Dual Wield Expert, increasing weapon damage by 6% of the offhand weapon. So increasing the damage done with that. Next one we have is Control Fear. This is with only dual wield casting abilities. Reduce the stamina cost of dual wield abilities by 15%. Next one we have is Ruffian. While using dual wield attacks only, give us a 15% damage bonus when attacking, stun, immobilize, disorient, or silence enemies. So by incapacitating strike with silence and then quickly going over into Blood Craze, we do 15% more damage with the Blood Craze. Last passive we have is Twin Blades and Blunt. This just gives us a description of what weapon we are, since we are using dual daggers. For each dagger, increase our weapon critical rating. Our current bonus is 2,100. And the bow passives, we're using Long Shot, give us a damage bonus up to 12% against enemies at longer ranges. Next passive we have is Accurate. With the bow equipped, increase our weapon critical rating by 1,000. We have then Ranger, reduce the stamina cost of bow abilities by 15%. Then Hawkeye, with the bow equipped still, dealing damage with light or heavy attack, increases the damage of our bow abilities by 5% for 5 seconds, and we can stack it up to 5 times, so an additional 25%. Last passive for the bow is we have Hasty Retreat. Gives us major expedition for 4 seconds after using a roll dodge. So increase our movement speed by 30%. Into the armor, for light armor, we use the top 3 only because the one below requires us wearing 5 pieces. We're only wearing 1. So first passive we have its Grace. Reduce the effectiveness of snares applied to us by 4%. For light armor, we're only wearing 1, so we get 4. And reduce the cost of sprint by 3%. Advocate. This one increases our magical recovery by 4% per piece. We're wearing 1, so 4%, and reduce the magic cost of our abilities by 2%. Spell Warden. Increase our spell resistance by 360 for each piece of light armor equipped. We only have 1. So medium armor. This is where we have our 5, so this is where we benefit the most. Increase our weapon with dexterity. We increase our weapon critical rating by 300 for each piece of medium armor. That gives us 1,600. Windwalker, increase stamina recovery by 4%. We get 20% there, and reduce the stamina cost of our abilities by 2%, so we get 10% for 5 pieces. Improve sneak. This is not a necessary thing. This is more for a roleplay style. So we reduce the cost of sneak by 7 per piece of armor, so that's at 35%. Reduce the size of our detection area while sneaking by 5%, so we get it at 25%. Agility. When 5 or more pieces of medium armor are equipped, increase our weapon damage by 15%, so this is where we do a lot more hitting as well. Last ability, Athletics. Increase our movement speed bonus of sprint by 3%, so we get 15% there, and reduce the cost of roll dodge by 4% per piece of medium armor, so we get 20% there. Heavy armor. For resolve, increase our physical and spell resistance by 300 for each piece. We got 1, so we get 360. Construction. Increase our health recovery by 4, and we restore 108 magicka and stam when taking damage for each piece of heavy armor equipped. This effect can only occur once every 4 seconds, so we get the 108 for the 1 piece. Juggernaut, increase our max health by 2%. And you cannot have the bottom 2 because you are not wearing 5 pieces or more. World, I wouldn't worry about world. This is, like I said, this is just a flavor thing that I just do for my build. Soul Magic. I would recommend getting Soul Summon. Allows you to revive once every 1 hour without spending a soul gem to save you on soul gems. It helps out a lot. Guilds. I just have, like I said, this is for questing. I do Intimidating Pressure. Then you will want Banish the Wicked. You generate 9 ultimate when killing undead, Daedra, or werewolves. There are a lot of that in the game, so this is very nice. Mage's Guild, I just have Persuasive Will, something that you can use for questing. In the Undaunted skill line, passives I use is Undaunted Command, activating a ally synergy, restore 4% of your max health, stam, and magicka. So current bonuses we get is 830 on health, 1100 on stam, and 470 on magicka. Undaunted Metal, I'd recommend it to get this up to level 9 and then put both of it in here. Increase our max health, stam, and magicka by 2%. If we're looking at the next rank, per type of armor, heavy, medium, and light. And since we are wearing at least 1 of each, we get a 6% bonus for that. So our magicka, stam, and health would be a lot higher. Race, I am a Wood Elf for this build. I felt Wood Elf had a lot better sustain over the other builds out there. If you're looking for more damage, Orc would be a very good choice of this. If you want more of the sneaky type, Khajiit is a more better maximizing your resources of magicka, stam, and health. So in the Wood Elf passives, we have Hunter's Eye, increase our stealth detection radius by 3 meters, increase our movement speed by 10%, and your physical and spell penetration by 1,500 for 6 seconds after a dodge roll. Yerfe's Endurance, increase our stamina recovery by 258. And Resistance Affliction, increasing our max stam by 2,000 and poison resistance by 2,300. Into the crafting, we will want to get into the alchemy tree. We will want medicinal use. When using potions, result effects last 30% longer. So they last for 47.5 seconds, which a cooldown on a potion is 45 seconds. So by having this all the way up, you can have 100% tick time on your potion, so you can constantly be using them and still have very nice recovery. And in provisioning, I would recommend getting the Consieur. Add 20 minutes to the duration of any consumed drink. Since Dubious Cameron Throne is a drink, we get 20 more minutes on that. If you are going to run any food, I would recommend getting Gourmet. This will add the 20 minutes to there all the way leveled up. Now over into champion points. Starting off in the tower in the green tree, we have 23 into Warlord, 9 into Sprinter. In the lover tree, we have 75 into Mooncalf, 23 into Arcanist, and 15 into Tenacity. In the shadow, we have 20 into Tumbling and 20 into Shadow Ward. Starting in the blue tree with the Apprentice, we have no points into this. This does not help us any in this tree. In the Astronaut, we have 37 points into Master at Arms. And in the Ritual, we have 37 points into Thaumaturge, with 36 points into Pure Strikes, 35 into Piercing, and 37 into Mighty. Over in the red tree, starting with the Steed, we have 37 points into Ironclad, 21 into Spell Shield. With the Lady, we have 34 into Thick Skin, 35 into Hardy and Elemental Defender. Last but not least, in the Lord, we have 23 points into Quick Recovery. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.